Well, folks, the energy in the Kamala Harris campaign is being drained away. She's making desperation moves in the campaign. This thing remains tight as a tick, however. But in other news, you should know, on October 28th, Matt Walsh's hit comedy, Am I Racist?, is finally coming home to Daily Wire Plus. That is correct. The #1 documentary of the decade will be available for streaming exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. If you're not a Daily Wire Plus member, you need to be. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code AIR for 35% off new annual memberships right now. All right, so brand new Harvard-Harris CAPS poll out looking at the swing states. It looks like Kamala Harris is actually slightly behind in the swing states, 48.2% to 46.2%. That's a 2-point lead for Donald Trump in the swing states. Again, there's a lot of problems here for Kamala Harris. Apparently, according to Trump voters, 88% say they've already made up their mind. Harris is at 84%. And while Harris has a slight lead among likely voters, that reverses among both likely and registered voters in the battleground states. Again, independents in the battleground states break 44-40 for Trump. Males break 54-41 for Trump. Females are only breaking for Harris 51-42, which is not the gap she is looking for, not the droids she is looking for. And the fact is that if she can't get that single white lady vote up to total female vote 57-43, she's got a real problem on her hands. College graduates, 49-49 tie. Again, this is in the swing states, this is not nationally. Asian voters, 66-20 for Trump. Black voters, 72-22 for Harris. Terrible numbers for Harris there. She needs to be up in the 90th percentile in order for her to win. Urban voters, 53-42 for Harris. Suburban voters, 49-47 for Trump. If Trump is winning suburban voters outright, disaster area for Kamala Harris in the swing states. And that is why you are seeing, again, all of those swing state polls seem to be trending in Donald Trump's favor. According to that Real Clear Politics polling average, Donald Trump currently has a minor but real lead in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia, as well as, by the way, Nevada, which has now moved back into his column in the Real Clear Politics polling average. So, then something has shifted in this race. And the thing that has shifted in this race is that people are finally realizing exactly who Kamala Harris is. And she certainly is feeling it, which is why she is now starting to greenlight interviews with actual unfriendlies. This is a problem for her. This is a no-win situation for her. The thing about Kamala Harris that people are discovering for the first time, perhaps, is that she is completely vacuous. There is nothing there. Nothing there. And as we'll explain in a moment, that is underscored by the fact that there has never been anything there. There's a big story that broke yesterday, thanks to our friend Chris Rufo, who does amazing investigative work, that basically breaks wide open the reality that she is an empty vessel and always was an empty vessel. So now she is trying a desperation move. That desperation move is to be interviewed by Bret on Wednesday in Pennsylvania. Now, that is a risky move for her because Bret presumably will ask her some actual questions. Presumably Fox News will not slice and dice her interview the way 60 Minutes did for her to try and save her from herself in that interview with Bill Whitaker. According to the Associated Press, it will be her first sit-down with Fox News and her first interview with a news outlet outside of her ideological comfort zone since becoming the Democrat nominee. Again, the only interviews that she has done that even allowed the possibility of unfriendly questions so far were CNN and CBS. And both of those were cut to her specifications. That Fox News interview is slated to air 6 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday evening. If that interview goes poorly for her, it may finish off her campaign. But she's not done there. Apparently, the Harris team, in a desperation play to try to win over men, and they are having a major problem winning over men, is one of the biggest problems with the Harris campaign. Joe Biden was running weak among black voters, but he was running stronger among male voters than Kamala Harris is. It turns out that males really, really don't like the sort of anti-male tenor and tone of the Kamala Harris campaign. They do not like Tim Walz. They think of him as a weird, effeminate, strange person. They do not like Doug Emhoff, who is being trotted out like an effeminate corgi. They don't like any of that stuff. There's nothing about the Kamala Harris campaign that appeals to normal human males. Folks, a lot of people are not liking the anti-male tone of the Kamala Harris campaign, but let's be real, there's a lot not to like about Kamala Harris if she were to get into office? Well, it would be like throwing gas on a dumpster fire that's already visible from space financially. Here's what you can do. Protect your savings by diversifying right now into gold from my friends over at Birch Gold. That's right, for millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can protect you now. Birch Gold will help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news? It doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Think about this for a second. In the past 4 years, while the buying power of the US dollar has been declining faster than CNN's ratings, the price of gold has increased 40%. Is that a coincidence? I think not. Here's what you need to do. Text BEN to 989898. You'll get your free info kit on gold, and then you can diversify. As the exclusive gold partner of the Daily Wire for the past 8 years, you can trust Birch Gold as I do to protect your savings. Don't wait for the election results to start thinking about your financial future. Text BEN to the number 989898 for your free info kit today. Ask all of your questions, get them answered, and then think about investing in gold with my friends at Birch Gold. That's BEN to the number 989898 to get started today. Now, again, that's not to say there aren't going to be men who vote for Kamala Harris because they hate Donald Trump, but the idea that she is a uniquely charismatic or magnetic figure for men, not even slightly. She's wildly off-putting, and so is her campaign. So what is she trying to do? According to Reuters, she is now thinking about sitting down with Joe Rogan. Well, boy, it's going to be kind of awkward when Jamie pulls up those clips of her talking about transing the illegal immigrants. That is it. You talk about a risky move. Talk about a Hail Mary there. And who does she think she's going to win over? Perhaps she has a couple of normie moments, but in a 3-hour format with Joe Rogan, this lady can't get through 20 minutes without being chopped up by 60 minutes. 3 hours with Joe? All Joe has to do is let her go, man. Just let her talk. Ask her a couple of difficult questions about the border and then just let her jabber. And she'll get in her slaps against Donald Trump, but we've already heard all those things. So Bret, Baier, and Joe Rogan, this is them realizing that this race is running away from them and there is no way to stop it. We'll get back to that problem with men in a moment. But as far as the empty vessel of it, Chris Rufo broke a big story yesterday that's completely being downplayed by the legacy media. And there are a number of big stories that have been completely downplayed or ignored by legacy media. Among them, the fact that her supposedly new male energy exemplar, Doug Emhoff, likely beat up his ex-girlfriend. I mean, these are like real stories that certainly would break on the front page of the newspapers if it were about, say, the spouse of a Republican. But it's the spouse of the Democratic candidates who have to pretend that Doug Emhoff is actually an example of good male energy. But the latest story that the media are trying to bury is from Chris Rufo. And what he found is that Kamala Harris plagiarized at least a dozen sections of her criminal justice book, Smart on Crime, according to a new investigation. She even lifted material directly from Wikipedia. Okay, first rule of being smart on crime, by the way, do not plagiarize from Wikipedia. So you can see in these graphics side by side how much she stole from, for example, the Associated Press here, without a footnote. Okay, here is the problem. When you write these books, and I've written, 11 books under my own name, and I used to ghostwrite for a living, so a bunch of books under other people's names. When you are writing factual books, very often you're relying on media reports. You have to change the wording and you have to footnote it. Right? Those are a few of the things that you have to do. You have to actually go through and paraphrase, and then you have to footnote the thing. If you don't do that, it's plagiarism and stealing. But Kamala Harris apparently just, without dropping footnotes, just lifted entire paragraphs of text from, for example, the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, or from the Associated Press, or from Wikipedia. By the way, lifting passages directly from Wikipedia is not a good source. Wikipedia is a compendium of what other people have written about a topic, and they are just randos. It's not like somebody has written a peer-reviewed book or something. Here she is ripping off the Bureau of Justice Assistance in that same book. According to Chris Rufo, the investigation was conducted by Dr. Stefan Weber, a famed Austrian plagiarism hunter who has taken down politicians in the German-speaking world. We independently confirmed multiple violations, which are comparable in severity to the plagiarism found in former Harvard President Claudine Gay's doctoral thesis. Well, that is not particularly good. And it underscores the fact that she has always been a big nothing burger, a giant nothing burger. There is no there. And you can see it. Every time she talks, there's no there. It's why she spins around in circles. Maybe there's just nothing deeper. We keep trying to scrape the surface and find the deeper level of Kamala Harris. Maybe it's just deeper layers of emptiness. Maybe it turns out that at the core of Kamala Harris is just a gaping vacuum. That's what plagiarism speaks to. By the way, it used to be in this country that if you were a plagiarist, you got kicked out of a presidential race. You know who used to know that? Joe Biden. It happened to him in 1988. He plagiarized a story from the British politician Neil Kinnock, and it basically ended his presidential campaign. Here, Kamala Harris, apparently, she or her ghostwriter plagiarized about a dozen sections of her book. The New York Times headline, by the way, is, quote, "Conservative activist seizes on passages from Harris book." That is the least descriptive headline I have ever heard, and it is directed, of course, on the conservatives' pounce routine. Conservative activist seizes on passages from Harris book. What passages? What is he seizing on? You have no idea from that headline. A report by Chris Rufo says the Democratic presidential nominee copied 5 short passages for a 2009 book on crime. A plagiarism expert said the lapses were not serious. So no big deal. No big deal. In a review of the book, the New York Times found that none of the passages in question took the ideas or thoughts of another writer, which is considered the most serious form of plagiarism. Instead, the sentences copy descriptions of programs or statistical information that appear elsewhere. The 5 passages Rufo cited appeared to have been taken partly from other published work without quotation marks. Jonathan Bailey is the plagiarism consultant in New Orleans, who they consulted. He said on Monday his initial reaction was that the errors were not serious given the size of the document. This amount of plagiarism amounts to an error and not an intent to defraud, he said. Okay, there's only one problem, which is the plagiarism expert then responded, quote, "For those coming here from the New York Times article, I want to make clear I have not performed a full analysis of the book. My quotes were based on information provided to me by the reporters and spoke only about those passages. I've been out of the office today for the holiday. I have not been able to follow the coverage. When I've had more time, I'll likely have more thoughts. I'd expect something tomorrow or Wednesday on the site, depending on client work." Chris Rufo immediately responded to him and said, "My team will send you the full dossier with more than a dozen of the accusations. The New York Times was dishonest with you. Even CNN confirms it is absolutely plagiarism. It's not too late to salvage your reputation and tell the truth. Set the record straight." CNN, by the way, did acknowledge in its article that this was likely plagiarism. CNN reviewed several of the passages highlighted by Rufo and found that Harris and O.C. Hamilton failed to properly attribute language to sources. So, yeah, it just shows, why does this matter, right? Okay, plagiarism back in a book that she wrote years ago or had ghostwritten years ago. Why does that matter? Because, again, that is who Kamala Harris is. J.D. Vance got this exactly right. He said you can either have the candidate who has his own ideas or you can have the candidate who just plagiarizes. And she's vacuous and empty. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Joe Biden was reluctant to get out of the race because he knew that Kamala Harris, well, she digs holes and then she doesn't stop digging holes. Speaking of which, if you get into credit card debt, you first got to stop digging the hole. Getting out of that hole, very difficult. If you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, medical bills, you need to check out PDS Debt. PDS provides a service to match you with debt solutions tailored to your financial situation. If you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances aren't going down, PDS has solutions for you. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit accepted. There are a lot of folks who are suffering with debt. I know many of them. Once you're in debt, it is so hard to get out unless you have some sort of option, and that's where PDS Debt comes in. They have customized options for everyone. They strive to understand your specific scenario and can help provide alternative solutions to becoming debt-free. Save more while paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. Stop waiting. Start saving. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. It only takes 30 seconds to get started. That's pdsdebt.com/Shapiro today. pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. Don't let debt ruin your life. Instead, go get it solved with our friends over at pdsdebt.com/Shapiro to get started today. There is a reason Joe Biden was reluctant to step out of the race other than his ego. He knew that Kamala Harris is a tear-up-bull candidate. Here, for example, again, the biggest obstacle to Kamala Harris becoming president is not Donald Trump. It is Kamala Harris. Here is Kamala Harris yesterday trying to talk about space.
You know, there's this whole, I talked with somebody once who said, you know, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation, what does it show you? So you just outlined it, Roland. What does it show you?
What in the world? What in the actual world? By the way, this lady's DOJ is currently trying to shut down Elon Musk for not hiring enough refugees or something. Yeah, I need this lady describing space to me. If you just look at the stars, and they make these things called constellations. There's the Big Dipper. There's the Little Dipper. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. Good gracious me. When she's not doing that, it's just platitudes with an attitude over at her campaign headquarters. I can't believe they're going with this turn the page routine. You remember when Gwen Walz did that? Gwen Walz, the bizarre wife of bizarre husband Tim Walz. Turn the page! Like 97 times in a row. Well, now Kamala Harris is picking up on it. So it wasn't enough that Gwen Walz annoyed us with this. Now we got Kamala Harris saying turn the page. Turn the page from what? You're the current vice president of the United States. How do we turn the page from you? That's the thing people are asking right now. How do we turn the page from you and your boss? How?
Well, folks, it's time to turn the page. It's time to turn the page. Turn the page.
She's doing the weird smiling, laughing thing. Turn the page, turn the page.
Because America is ready to chart a new way forward.
Nothing says new way forward like the current vice president of the United States, who has said that she has no policy distinctions from the current president of the United States. Sounds exactly like a brand new page, same as the old page. Now, she has a bunch of problems, obviously, in the polls. We've mentioned a couple of them. One is her problem with black voters. One is her problem with male voters. Her problem with male voters is incredibly serious. This has been a serious, percolating problem with the Harris campaign basically since day one. Blue-collar, white male voters do not like her. And I thought a bleeding edge indicator of this was that internal Teamsters Union poll that showed that when Joe Biden was in the race, he was beating Donald Trump among the Teamsters Union members, something like 47 to 37. And the minute that he dropped out and Kamala got in, suddenly the Teamsters, almost entirely male, shifted 60-40 in favor of Trump. The current numbers on the gender gap right now from virtually every poll show a larger gender gap for men than for women, which is a serious problem. Listen, women vote in larger numbers than men. Higher percentages of women vote in the elections than men. However, if that gender gap is really large, and if Trump does what he typically does, which is he brings out all of those low proclivity voters, all of the people who are less likely to show up, then he's got the lead right now. And you know it certainly doesn't help. There's a new ad that has come out from a group of people, a grassroots collective of ad execs, TV writers, and comedians called Creatives for Harris. And they are trying to counteract the image that men don't like Kamala Harris with an ad. This ad was then watermarked by Vote Save America, which is a project of Crooked Media, or associated with Crooked Media, which is the Pod Save America bros. This ad apparently has now been removed by Vote Save America. They found it too embarrassing. The ad, I think, was directed at men by telling men that they should stop being dudes. That's what this ad really is. So this is what the left wing perceives masculinity to be. I wonder why they're failing among men. This ad is all about men who say they're voting for Kamala Harris, but the real ad is directed at the idea of stereotypical masculinity, which apparently is bad and negative. And the way they're going to show that is by making fun of men. No, nothing says vote for Kamala Harris dudes. Like, dudes, you really shouldn't be dudes, and you should drop all of this dudeness.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse. I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually. Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful. That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
I don't think any of those men love women. I'm just going to put that out there. I mean, that dude sitting on the back of the pickup truck, I don't know, a straight man in the world who sits like that. Apparently, according to Fast Company, which is an ad analysis company, they describe the ad. They say the Man Enough campaign kicks off with a cornucopia of traditionally masculine signifiers: a cowboy, a yoked gym rat. Yoked is a little bit much there. A biker and his hog. Each beacon of machismo takes turns talking directly to camera about the testosteronific activities that get their motor running, such as consuming raw steak or barrel-proof whiskey. Things take a turn, though, after the gym rat declares himself man enough to deadlift 500 and braid the bleep out of my daughter's hair. Here's where the real message kicks in, that the established stratifications of gender roles in society is a thing of the past, and clinging to it is ridiculous. The video then goes a step further, pitching a new model for masculinity, where supporting women is the status quo. Sounds amazing. Apparently, this is born when Jacob Reed, a comedic director who has worked with Funny or Die and Jimmy Kimmel Live, no wonder this thing sucks, was watching the DNC. He felt inspired by the way Barack Obama spoke of Michelle when introducing her, and the way Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff gazed up proudly at Kamala Harris during her speech. He also admired the way Tim Walz talked about his wife Gwen. All of this struck him as a form of masculinity that hasn't been talked about enough in the election cycle. It was to him the polar opposite of the alternative. So apparently, Reed then told the creatives for Harris' team, which meets regularly on Slack to brainstorm ideas. The message quickly met with a robust gallery of upward thumb smiley faces and double exclamation points. Wow. Some manly stuff right here. Buoyed by the encouragement, Reed tapped into his network of talented filmmakers, actors, and casting directors and put together the video on a shoestring budget. The original version was a bit more scolding. It included lines like, quote, "I'm not afraid of a woman having rights, because what kind of a creep would I be then?" After marinating on the concept a bit further, Reed realized the last thing he wanted to do was condescend to his potential audience, whom he saw as both people already on board the Harris train and people on the fence. He says this is exactly the kind of consideration missing from recent conversations on the left aimed at young men. Rather than despair over young men drifting into the MAGA zone, Reed wants to see a party-wide effort to weigh in on the masculinity conversation without preaching or demonizing. Okay, if there's anything in that video that appeals to men, I've yet to find it. The entire thing, which is the implication that the reason you oppose Kamala Harris is because you're scared of women or you hate women, and that real masculinity is basically submissiveness to Kamala Harris, is pathetic. I can't imagine why so many people are off-put by this. I mean, this ad is awful, but there are a lot of bad ads this election season. Election season is on. The future is on everybody's mind. You know what else should be on your mind? The future of your family. No matter what happens over the next 4 years, one thing remains constant: the need to protect your loved ones. This is where policy genius comes in. Let's talk about reality for a moment. God forbid something were to happen to you. Would your family be able to cover expenses, mortgage payments, college tuition, daily living costs? Those don't just disappear if something happens to you. Life insurance can ensure your family has the financial support they need, even if you're not there to provide it. Did you know that 41% of Americans don't have the life insurance coverage they need? Do not be part of that statistic. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. They help you find the right life insurance policy at the best price so you can have peace of mind knowing your family is protected. Now, I know you're thinking that getting life insurance sounds like a hassle, but here's the thing. It is not. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius makes it super easy. Their licensed support team helps you get what you need fast. Save time and money on providing a financial safety net to your family. Head on over to policygenius.com/Shapiro or click the link in the description. Get your free life insurance quote. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. By the way, a lot of minority men, very off-put by this. It turns out that traditional notions of masculinity may have gone by the wayside among some white college-educated liberal men, but they certainly have not among all the other men in the land, which is one of the reasons why the Harris campaign is really lagging with black men. They don't like being lectured. Just like everybody else, they do not like being lectured. And so now Kamala Harris has to do something she did not want to do. She has to somehow shore up support from black men. According to Politico, Kamala Harris, looking at daunting polling that shows she could draw some of the softest support for a Democratic nominee among black men, is rolling out new efforts to shore up support with this key voting bloc. So what is she going to do? She's going to engage in outright bribery. I'm not even kidding. Outright bribery. According to Politico, Harris plans several campaign events and policy proposals designed to appeal to black men. She plans to announce 3 new policy prescriptions, providing 1 million small business loans that are forgivable up to $20,000. Okay, first of all, if these are directed at black men, that's in violation of the Civil Rights Act. It's illegal. She can't just say, here are 1 million small business loans that we'll just forgive up to 20 grand, but only for black men. Not possible. Violative of the Civil Rights Act and the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Equal Protection Clause. Not allowed. So she is promising to bribe black men with money that will be forgiven. Can't imagine how that will lead to fraud, by the way. People are definitely going to take out a loan that is forgivable by the federal government. And then they're going to pay it back, probably. Also, training and mentorship programs that would help give black men a leg up in jumping into high-demand industries, and launching an initiative focused on health issues that disproportionately impact black men. Sure, yeah, nailed it. This is it. Just try to bribe them. Just throw more money at them. Democratic Party's been trying this for, I don't know, half a century or so. And Kamala Harris is still losing large numbers of black men. And she doesn't understand why. Maybe the reason is Barack Obama could at least credibly pretend to be not anti-masculine, right? He had the whole, I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot hoops thing. I'm a cool guy. I'm going to go shoot some baskets. even if his outside jumper lags a little bit from his playing days. Kamala Harris, she married, again, Doug Emhoff, who is the least masculine male in the race, and that includes Tim Walz. And now she's out there proclaiming that basically what she wants is submissiveness from men in her orbit. That is not going to do it. Quentin Folks, the campaign's principal deputy campaign manager, said the campaign is trying to answer, quote, what is holding black men back in this country in regards to being able to achieve economic well-being? There has to be a reprioritization of speaking to both black men and black women in America when it comes to a lot of the challenges that they face. Now, again, they trotted out Barack Obama to basically yell at black men and said they should stop being mean to Kamala Harris, that they need to be real men and start supporting women. Meanwhile, again, Charlamagne the God, he came out and he said, I think it's whack, the scolding that Barack Obama was laying on black men. Others said they weren't surprised by Obama's comments at all, according to Politico. The lecturing thing he did, that's crazy. That's the absolute wrong thing to do, said a veteran Democratic strategist and former Obama White House official. He always had a blind spot for black men. He doesn't quite understand the way we see the world. And these are problems for Kamala Harris and for the entire Democratic Party, which has always taken black men for granted, figuring that if you just yell about how Republicans are Nazi-esque racists enough, that they will just re-enter the fold. It ain't happening, though. CNN's Harry Enten, he points out that right now, Donald Trump is slated to perform the best with blacks since any Republican since Nixon in 1960.
I mean, the bottom line is this. At this particular hour, if you believe the polling, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance with black voters since Richard Nixon back in 1960. Not 68, since 1960. That's 64 years ago. Among Hispanic voters, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance for Republicans since 2004 and George W. Bush.
So Kamala Harris's answer to this is to yell at people about how Donald Trump hates black people, which no one believes. No one really believes that Donald Trump is a vicious, black-hating racist. That is what Kamala Harris, though, is saying on Roland Martin's show.
Look at it in the context of how he actually thinks and talks about black folks in America. And you and I have talked about this before. He is not looking out for folks when he was a landlord and would not rent to black families, sued for it. When he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times against those 5 teenagers, black and Latino, who were innocent, saying they should be executed, the Central Park 5. When you look at the first black president of the United States, and he had birther lines, and now you look at black immigrants, legal immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, and he gets on a debate stage and says they're eating their pets? Come on. This man is dangerous.
Dangerous. No one believes this. No one believes this. They are trying to paint Donald Trump as anti-black. Nobody believes this, but here's something that you can paint that will make your life better. That is a portrait of your family. This is a very, very cool present, especially for family and friends. Finding a gift that actually matters is very difficult these days. Fear not, I've discovered something that might just restore your faith in gift giving this upcoming holiday season. Paint Your Life. It transforms your photos into one-of-a-kind, beautiful hand-painted portraits by professional artists. Imagine giving a hand-painted portrait of a moment that actually matters. I've done this for my family. I've done this for my wife's parents, for us. The process is refreshingly straightforward. No jumping through hoops, no bureaucratic nightmares. It takes less than 5 minutes to order a custom-made, hand-painted portrait. You simply choose a photo. Paint Your Life transforms it into a painting. Again, it is awesome. I received a painting from them over a year ago. It is hung in my living room for the whole family to enjoy. Here's the best part. You can combine photos. You can even add elements. If you want to include long-lost relatives in the family portrait, they can do that. You want to put yourself in a different location than, like your basement, they can do that as well. You get to approve every stage of the portrait process and request as many modifications as you'd like to ensure the portrait is painted just like you imagined. You can even get your hand-painted portrait in as little as 2 weeks, making it the perfect holiday gift. Get started with your holiday shopping early this season. Give the most meaningful gift you've ever given from PaintYourLife.com. There's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded, guaranteed. Order now. Get Paint Your Life's early bird holiday offer, 20% off your painting. That's right. For a limited time, get 20% off super cool and free shipping. Get this special offer by texting the word Ben to 87204. That's Ben to 87204. Text Ben to 87204. Paint Your Life. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Also, by the way, linking all of those things as though they are all of the same piece. What he said about Haitian migrants is the same thing as the Central Park 5, is the same thing that he says when he's on the campaign trail about welfare programs or some such nonsense. No one believes this, which is why she has a problem. By the way, the Arab American PAC has now said that they are going to forego a presidential endorsement. Why? Well, because Kamala Harris, as much as she would like to throw Israel totally under the bus, it turns out that actually the Democratic Party is quite split on Israel. The Republican Party, by the way, is not. The Republican Party is extremely pro-Israel. Independents in this country are extremely pro-Israel. But the Democratic Party is split down the middle. And Arab Americans, who unfortunately many of them are wildly anti-Israel, have decided via the Arab American Pact that they're not going to endorse Kamala Harris, which particularly hurts her in Michigan. It's going to drive down turnout for her in Michigan. So now she's unleashing surrogates. And I got to say, the surrogate game ain't strong either. And desperation is setting in this campaign. Amy Klobuchar, most famous for throwing binders at her staff, the senator from Minnesota, she was bragging about what's going to happen in this campaign. She said, can you imagine Bernie Sanders and Dick Cheney campaigning together? That's the kind of surrogates that Kamala Harris, yes. You want to talk about bringing in a wide variety of voters, Dick Cheney and Bernie Sanders campaigning together. First of all, that's the buddy comedy we didn't know we needed. But second of all, really? That's your big appeal? To whom precisely? Who exactly is the swing voter who's like, man, I love Bernie Sanders. I love Dick Cheney. Those two guys together, that's magic for me.
You know, and it's only a matter of time where we're going to see like a bus going through western Wisconsin with, I want you to picture this, Bernie Sanders and Dick Cheney together holding a sign that says Bret fall. Okay? That is our plan, okay?
Wow. Good luck to you if that is your surrogate team. Part of the surrogate team is Bill Clinton, who's been unleashed from the grave to go out on the campaign trail and immediately starts making boo-boos. So he's talking about the supposed failure of the Republicans to pass Joe Biden's beloved immigration reform bill that would have legalized millions of illegal immigrants. And by the way, that bill was not good. That bill included a baseline 3,000 to 4,000 illegal immigrants entering the country every single day before the federal government, before the executive branch, had the capacity to single-handedly invoke the enforcement of immigration law. But Bill Clinton unfortunately said the quiet part out loud here, which is that if Joe Biden had done his job, people like Laken Riley would still be alive. They were like, get out there on the stump, Bill, and help us out. He's like, well, Kamala did get that lady killed.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
He's trying to pretend that that's an effect of not passing the illegal immigration bill. That is an impact of Joe Biden's border policy and Kamala Harris's border policy. So whoopsie doodle. Well, that leaves them with their final desperation play, which is to try to convince you once again. They tried not to do this. Again, they're pulling out all the stops. So this campaign from Joe Biden began with him at Independence Hall in Philadelphia claiming that his political opponents were fascists who were going to destroy our republic. Remember that. And then when Kamala Harris jumped in, she didn't do any of that. She wasn't talking about racial division. Now she's talking about racial division. She wasn't talking about how Donald Trump was a threat to the republic so grave that no one could possibly consider voting for him. She didn't do that. Now she is. They're dragging out all of the old failed arguments here in a desperation attempt to stop what they think is coming, a Donald Trump victory. You have James Carville saying, I don't know what else to do here, man. I guess just call him a fascist.
He's holding a rally in Madison Square Garden that, I'm sorry, is a mimic of a rally held on February 20th, 1939 by the American Nazi Party. And we've got to quit being timid about making these connections that he is going out of his way to make. The idea that he can propose these really anti-democratic, authoritarian, General Milley says he's fascist to his core. General Milley was a former head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We got to get serious here with the threat that we face with. That's my point. We're not near serious enough.
Yes. I mean, this is where James Carville is gone. So remember, James Carville was, it's the economy stupid guy. And now they can't run on that because it turns out people don't like Joe Biden's economy. And they can't run on Kamala Harris's record because she ain't got a good one. And they can't run on her character because she doesn't have one. And so now they're relegated to going back to the well. Here's Kamala Harris doing the same thing, claiming that Donald Trump is going to target you with the military. Who thinks Donald Trump is going to target them with the military? Honest to God. He was president for 4 years. Who was targeted with the military? I know people who are targeted under Kamala Harris. When she was Attorney General of California, she targeted David Laken, the journalist who had the temerity to expose Planned Parenthood. Her administration has been unleashed on a wide variety of political opponents, ranging from pro-lifers to suburban moms and dads. But she's claiming that Donald Trump is going to unleash them on whom? The only people that Donald Trump has ever truly threatened to unleash the military on are rioters. Here she is.
He is saying that he would use the military to go after them. Think about this. And we know who he would target. And we know who he would target because he has attacked them before. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. Election officials who refuse to cheat by filling extra votes and finding extra votes for him. Judges who insist on following the law.
Oh my gosh. They insist on following the law? You tried to use OSHA to force 80 million Americans to vaccinate. Tim Walz doing the same routine. This is what they're relegated to. And the stink of a losing campaign is upon them now.
He suggested that he is going to send the military against the enemy from within. Now, I want you to think about it. In other words, Americans who don't support him. Just to be clear, if any of your neighbors or friends or anybody thinks about that, you know who he's talking about? He's talking about you. He's talking about you.
No, he is not. And no one believes that. Tim Walz let a riot burn down his central city in Minnesota. He's talking about you. Yeah, they got a problem. Well, in a moment, we'll get to their unleashing of the TikTok creators. First, the moment you've been waiting for. It is almost here. Almost here. October 28th, Matt Walsh's hit comedy, Am I Racist?, comes home to Daily Wire Plus. When it hits theaters this September, it immediately became the #1 new comedy. Now, it is officially the #1 documentary of the decade that is worth repeating to really irritate our friends on the left. Am I Racist? Is the #1 box office documentary of the last decade. It is verified hot on Rotten Tomatoes with a 97% audience score. So, you didn't get to see it because it wasn't in your town, or you just missed it when it was in theaters. October 28th. Your couch is your front row seat to witness Matt Walsh going undercover to hilariously dismantle DEI. But Daily Wire Plus is the only place you can stream Am I Racist? None of the other streaming services. It is the only place. It all starts October 28th. If you're not a Daily Wire Plus member, go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code AIR, AIR, Am I Racist? Code AIR for 35% off new annual memberships right now. Your membership also gets you instant access to the cultural phenomenon, What is a Woman? That's streaming now as Matt's first groundbreaking documentary. And you'll be the first to watch Am I Racist at Home, streaming October 28th only at Daily Wire Plus. Well, when all else has failed, it's time to trot out the TikTok creators. So, again, Kamala Harris, she, I guess, is trying to drive up the youth vote. I mean, good luck. You want to talk about low propensity voters historically? Youth votes. Low propensity voters. So, they're trying to drive out the low propensity youth vote by unleashing the TikTok creators on Donald Trump. I don't think it's going to work. Axios has an entire piece about the magic of Kamala Harris's humor. Why don't we analyze some of this and see, how humorous this is? Here is a TikTok video that apparently the Harris campaign has been promoting, pushing the fact that Donald Trump wears bronzer. So for those who can't see it, that's just a series of pictures of President Trump wearing bronzer. And it's over Sabrina Carpenter, I believe. Sabrina Carpenter is the lady who, for some reason, is famous. And she sings songs. And it's about makeup. Did you find that humorous? Did you? Did you feel? Because if there's one thing that we know about Kamala Harris is that she's never worn makeup. And also, probably you should make fun of Donald Trump for being orange. No one's ever done that before. But you didn't like that one? Okay, fine. Here's another one where they call him Delulu.
They want to do things like no more cows and no windows in buildings. They have some wonderful plans for this country. Honestly, they're crazy.
He says, it says underneath, Trump is so delulu, what is he even saying? I mean, what he's actually talking about is the Green New Deal, where the proposal was that people should eat less meat and that windows allow in too much heat, so you should have fewer windows because then you might use the air conditioner. How about this one where they call him a chicken?
Why not debate her?
Well, wait. But because they already know everything. They say, Trump's, not doing the debate. That's the same thing they'll say now. I mean, right now I say, why should I do a debate? I'm leading in the polls. And everybody knows her. Everybody knows me. But when I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another net.
So Yeah, that was entertaining, wasn't it? You know, when they were playing clips of Trump saying he's not going to debate Kamala Harris, and then they played a chicken sound effect. I swear, they're now relegated to basically doing the Needles routine from Back to the Future 2. What are you, Chicken McFly? Chicken? Oh, these folks, it's going well. Well, when all else fails, you can use government employees to promote Kamala Harris propaganda. According to an exclusive story from the Daily Wire, there is an account called Kamala's Wins. It is not a good Twitter account, but it has many, many followers, like 750,000 followers on Twitter. It is a viral source of pro-Kamala misinformation. It was launched by a Biden administration employee. According to the Daily Wire, in July, the popular Biden's Wins account rebranded as Kamala's Wins. It now boasts that it is the largest online community supporting soon-to-be President Kamala Harris. So who's running it? Apparently, a Biden-Harris administration staffer. The Biden Wins account was launched in January 2022 by Ethan Wolf, a recent college graduate who was working as deputy political director for Illinois Democrat Brad Schneider's reelection campaign. Wolf's account became a favorite of White House staffers such as Ron Klain. By September 2022, he was invited to the White House for a private briefing with the president, the vice president, and Ron Klain. A month later, Wolf was back at the White House for another content creator briefing, posing for photos with top White House officials and doof Doug Emhoff. Just over a year after launching that account praising Biden, Wolf had earned himself a job in the administration. In June 2023, he was hired as a communications specialist in the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration, where he makes $94,000 a year. The timing of the event, as the Daily Wire points out, raises questions about the Biden-Harris administration's relationship with Wolf. The Harris campaign, responding to one of many viral lies that originated with his account, told PolitiFact it is not associated with Kamala's Wins. Though it seems Harris and the administration have worked closely with Wolf from the beginning of his career when he was fresh out of Ohio State University. So he's engaged in overtly political activity. He is subject to the Hatch Act. But what it looks like is that he was an ally of the administration. They gave him a cush job over there, pushing propaganda on behalf of Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris. So really strong stuff here from Team Kamala. I can't imagine why they're falling down on their face. Meanwhile, in preparation for a Donald Trump presidency, the world is getting significantly more dangerous. See, if you're China, you know now's your moment. It's your moment right now. Right? Maybe they wait until after the election in order to see if Kamala Harris wins. If Kamala Harris wins, they've got a little bit of time. They can play around the edges. If Donald Trump wins, they know that Trump is going to be a way harsher president on them than Joe Biden is. Maybe they go between November and January. Maybe during that lame duck period, they decide to make a move on Taiwan. They certainly are upping their aggressiveness in the Taiwan Straits. According to the Wall Street Journal, China said it concluded a day of around-the-clock drills around Taiwan, sending a record number of military aircraft, and saying for the first time it had deployed its Coast Guard to encircle the self-ruled democracy's main island. Beijing's military response came days after Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te, delivered a speech on October 10th in which he reaffirmed Taiwan's sovereignty and dismissed Beijing's claims to represent the island, though his message to China also called for calm. Taiwanese officials had warned that Chinese maneuvers were likely following Lai's remarks. Beijing has considered Lai, who was inaugurated in May, a staunch supporter of Taiwanese independence, a red line for leaders of China's Communist Party, which claims the island as part of its territory despite never having ruled it. On Monday morning, China's People's Liberation Army Eastern Theater Command said it had launched joint sea and air drills around Taiwan's main and outlying islands involving the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force, effectively simulating a blockade, which is the most likely thing, right? They wouldn't try a full-scale amphibious invasion. They'd simply blockade Taiwan until TSMC, which is the microchip producer on the island, superconductor producer, decides to allow the production of sophisticated microchips for Chinese military use. That's what the blockade would be for, and then they would dare Joe Biden to try and break the blockade. Some 14 hours later, the Chinese military said it had fully tested the integrated joint operation capabilities of its troops and wrapped up the exercises. So, is it possible that they'd make a move in the last waning days of the Biden administration? It sure is. Why the hell not? Why wouldn't Iran go for broke on a nuclear program between the election and the inauguration of Donald Trump if Donald Trump wins? So they're waiting. They're waiting until after the election to see what happens, which means that allies of the United States better get ready now, because things are going to get quite dicey in the very near future in both the Far East and also in the Middle East, where it looks like Iran is readying its own nuclear breakout potential. Meanwhile, what is the Biden administration doing? They're trying to stop Israel from launching strikes against those Iranian nuclear facilities, which is insane, by the way. That is perfectly insane foreign policy. American allies should get ready because things are going to get dicey after the election, but you should be getting ready right now to deal with your taxes. If you're still struggling with back taxes or unfiled returns, handling this alone can be a huge mistake. It can cost you thousands of dollars. In these challenging times, your best offense is Tax Network USA. With over 14 years of experience, the experts at Tax Network USA have saved their clients millions of dollars in back taxes. Regardless of the size of your tax issue, their expertise will work to your advantage. Tax Network USA offers 3 key services: protection, compliance, and settlement. Upon signing up, Tax Network USA will immediately contact the IRS to secure a protection order, ensuring that aggressive collection activities like garnishments, levies, or property seizures are halted. If you haven't filed in a while, if you need amended returns, or if you're just missing records, Tax Network USA's expert tax preparers will update all your filings and eliminate the risk of IRS enforcement. Then they create a settlement strategy to reduce or eliminate your tax debt. The IRS is the largest collection agency on planet Earth. Now that tax season is over, collection season has begun. Tax Network USA can even help with state tax issues. For a complimentary consultation, call today, 1-800-958-1000, or visit their website at tnusa.com/Shapiro. That's 1-800-958-1000, or visit tnusa.com/Shapiro today. Do not let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. If you actually want to facilitate conflict in the Middle East, wait until Iran has a nuclear weapon. Iran having a nuclear weapon, everyone knows this, is sort of the be-all and end-all of Middle Eastern conflict. If they gain a nuclear weapon, they will use that as the deterrent to Israeli action against terrorist groups. If they have a nuclear weapon, they will use that as a way of forcing Saudi Arabia into making concessions to, say, the Houthis in Yemen. A nuclear weapon changes the balance of power in the region pretty dramatically, which is why Israel has steadfastly for the last 20 years been killing every Iranian nuclear scientist it can get its hands on, and also implanting viruses like Stuxnet to completely destroy Iran's nuclear programs. Well, right now, Iran has fired 181 ballistic missiles into Israel. And Israel has not yet responded. And so the question was going to be what Israel's response would be. Now, the only appropriate response, truly, would be Israel blowing up the nuclear facilities if they could. And frankly, it would be very, very good for the United States and for the Western world if Israel did that, in the same way that it was very good in 1981 when Israel blew up the Iraqi Osirak reactor, condemned by the United States, by the way. It's why it was really good, why in the mid-2000s Israel blew up a nascent nuclear reactor in Syria. It would be very good for the Western world if Israel did that right now, with or without American help. There's a point that Pierre Poilievre has made over in Canada. He says, that would be great if Israel did that. It would push off the possibility of large-scale Middle Eastern conflict for another generation if Israel blew up the nuclear weapons facilities. So what is the Biden administration doing? Naturally, because they are conciliatory toward Iran, they are trying to ratchet down Israel's response. They're trying to tell Israel not to go particularly hard against Iran. Now listen, Israel doesn't want to go to full-scale war with Iran. Israel actually cares about its citizens. The Iranian government really does not. They shoot their citizens if they rebel in any way, shape, or form. With that said, does Israel have a large-scale interest in preventing the nuclearization of the Islamic theocracy that is Iran? Absolutely they do. And every time the Biden administration, again, tries to yank on the chain of the Israelis, all that happens is that terror increases. So there's a report 4 or 5 days ago that the Biden administration was telling the Israelis not to strike inside Beirut, which is where all of the Hezbollah top leaders are, and that Israel may have complied. And a few days later, Hezbollah then sent a drone into the middle of Israel, into a place called Binyamina, which is about, a third of the way down into Israeli territory, and hit a military base and wounded almost 70 people. Was that a coincidence? The Biden administration's policy here is just feckless beyond all recognition. But according to the Washington Post, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told the Biden administration he's willing to strike military rather than oil or nuclear facilities in Iran, according to 2 officials familiar with the matter, suggesting a more limited counterstrike aimed at preventing a full-scale war. When Biden and Netanyahu spoke on Wednesday, their first call in more than 7 weeks, the Prime Minister said he was planning to target military infrastructure in Iran. The White House had no immediate comment. The Israeli Prime Minister's office said, quote, "We listen to the opinions of the United States, but we will make our final decisions based on our national interest." The retaliatory action would be calibrated to avoid the perception of political interference in the U.S. elections. So basically, Joe Biden is now calling up Israel and threatening them. You want to talk about impeachable kind of stuff? So remember that time? Do you remember this? When Donald Trump was impeached from office for calling up Ukraine, calling up Vladimir Zelensky and saying, "We might withhold your military aid unless Burisma is investigated." You remember this? You remember this? He was impeached for that. Joe Biden is currently calling up our ally, Israel, and telling them, don't strike at the people who just shot 181 missiles into your country. Don't strike too hard before the election because it might hurt my electoral prospects. And if you do, I might punish you. Please explain the difference. I'm waiting. This is where you insert the crickets or the Jeopardy music. Okay, he is basically blackmailing Israel into not doing what it needs to do to preserve its own security because it wants Kamala Harris to win or something. An Israeli strike on Iranian oil facilities could send energy prices soaring, analysts say, while an attack on the country's nuclear research program could erase any remaining red lines governing Israel's conflict with Tehran. Any remaining red lines? What red lines are there precisely when you're firing almost 200 missiles directly into a sovereign nation? Please explain. Netanyahu's stated plan to go after military sites instead, as Israel did after Iran's attack in April, was met with relief in Washington. Netanyahu was in a more moderated place in that discussion than he had previously been, according to U.S. officials. By the way, one of the reasons Israel doesn't tell America its plans is because they immediately run to the Washington Post. Like, immediately. Again, amazing fecklessness. I want to give a shout out to Bill Maher. Bill Maher did an excellent monologue the other night on his show in which he ripped into the ridiculous singer Chappell Roan, who we are supposed to believe is some sort of insane talent, rather than just another example of transgressive pop art. Chappell Roan has come out in favor of the state of Palestine that does not exist. And Bill Maher informed her of some things.
Chappell, if you think it was repressive growing up queer in the Midwest, try the Mideast. You're a female drag queen, and you sing, I f***ed you in the bathroom when we went to dinner, your parents at the table. Yeah, that wouldn't fly in Gaza, although you would straight off a roof. You know when you sing that LA is where boys and girls can all be queens every single day? You're welcome, but offer not good in the West Bank. Chappell, you're not wrong that oppression is bad, or that Palestinian and many other Muslim populations are oppressed and deserve to be freed. You just have it completely backwards as to who is doing the oppressing. Hamas is a terrorist mafia that took over Gaza. The Revolutionary Guard is a terrorist mafia that took over Iran. ISIS is a terrorist mafia that took over Iraq. The Taliban is a terrorist mafia that took over Afghanistan. These are the oppressors. And when you make it all about Israel, you take the pressure off of them. You enable them. The Iranian regime has killed 600 protesters after a 22-year-old woman died in police custody following her arrest for the crime of wearing her head covering incorrectly. Just to be clear, that's your team.
Good for Bill Maher. I'm sure he took a bunch of crap from his lefty friends over in Los Angeles for this. That happens to be the truth. Unfortunately, those lefty friends all apparently staff the Kamala Harris administration, if God forbid she wins. Already coming up, we'll get into the giant baby bust that is crippling the West. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.
The question everyone in America is asking,
am I racist?
Make those moves. Get a Daily Wire Plus membership to see Am I Racist?
This is all I have. Did you want to?
I can help you guys out.
Yeah.
Go to amiracist.com and sign up now.
I've been told because I'm a white male, kind of at the top of the pile, how do I get down from the top?
I don't think you necessarily can.
How do we get past all the talk about racism?
We have to love each other.
Well, it can't be that simple. How do we get to a point of racial harmony? It's good to talk to you. We're still on a journey, all of us together.
I think you got some journeying to do.
Just talk to me about the statistics. We have an epidemic.
20 million crimes a year, 6,000, 7,000 hate crimes. No, there's no epidemic.
Why are we talking about statistics? This is not a matter of statistics.
Well, you asked me about the statistics.
Am I Racist? Coming to Daily Wire Plus on October 28th. Rated PG-13.